Hello, this is Samir Gradia of Earth-Based Records, and today, November 11th, 2021, is my birthday. Now, what do I want to say about November 11th first and foremost, and then I want to talk about birthdays, a little bit, alright? And then I'll wrap it all up. Alright, now. So, November 11th is Armistice Day, a Remembrance Day, and Veterans Day. Now, this is interesting. Number one, Armistice Day. Lay down your arms in wartime. It represented the end of World War One with Germany 1918 and observed around the world since then, 1918. 2018, and now 3 years later, 2021. Now, the second thing, Remembrance Day, to remember things. So, what is that? Remembrance. Remembrance. Now, the third part of this is, of course, Veterans Day. Now, what do I want to say about Veterans Day, November 11th? Also, to have a show of respect and decency and a lot of things like programs with a socialization, and I use that term socialization very, very, loosely. I don't implicate any kind of political, thingy like that, because of that. We're reintroducing veterans. Like, don't forget the veterans, just because war might be over. Like World War One, actually it was called the Great War. It wasn't called World War One. It was called the Great War. That means they didn't anticipate necessarily, World War Two war, Vietnam, Korean War before that, and of course, even though Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was, the general, main general of World War II for the United States. Then he became president. Then, after years of president, which is the most you can do according to our laws, then he presumably was a retired president. But that doesn't mean that he was without power, and in fact had conversations with Lyndon Baines Johnson um, in 1968 regarding the Vietnam War, also known in some countries as the Indochina War, the French Indochina War, etc. What the point is here that, for example, Dwight D. Eisenhower uh, had, a powerful voice in American politics up till and including 1968 and perhaps beyond that. Now, one more thing to remember, of course, 1963, I think it was when John F. Kennedy, our president, who lost the 1960 election to Dwight Eisenhower's vice president, Richard Nixon, according to the history which I was taught. And on November 22nd of that year, excuse me, John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. The person blamed for the assassination was Lee Harvey Oswald, although there have been debates about who exactly the assassin was. Now, so November 22nd is something where we might remember our former president, John F. Kennedy, John Fitzgerald. Uh, was F. Scott Fitzgerald was a Great Gatsby, was the John Fitzgerald. And then this is the problem. He had a brother named Robert F. Kennedy, and Robert was still the head of the Justice Department when his younger brother I think, was assassinated, John F. Kennedy. And then in 1968, Robert F. Kennedy was uh, the Democratic nominee for president right up till the end, right up to the almost election day. And he was assassinated by a gentleman named Sirhan Sirhan in a Los Angeles ballroom in this 1968, and then Richard Nixon was duly elected or appointed in a way, president in 1968 to 1972. At that time, the Vietnam War was wounded down. But I'll tell you, there was a something called the Tet Offensive just around the time of that document, which I saw with Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, had something to do with Kennedy versus Nixon and the French Indochina-Vietnam War, which is long concluded. We do have conclusory issues in Afghanistan today, which is not my concern. Although, as an American citizen, as like any other, I am concerned about the repatriation of those soldiers who want to return. That is why I refer to this time frame, 1968 to 1972, because by 1968, now America was ready pretty much to get out of the war in Vietnam or Indochina or French Vietnam. Basically, there was one last incident, the Tet Offensive in 1968, and same time that Robert F. Kennedy, ended up getting assassinated and Richard Nixon installed, you could say, as president in 1968, and all the way up to 75 when he resigned and Jimmy Carter became the president of the United States. He was the vice president. No, he was elected. No, Gerald Ford in 75, who was the vice president, but he wasn't even the original vice president. That was Spiro Agnew. Now, this is a lot of too much information. Now, the important point, the Vietnam War was pretty much over. By 1968, there was a last incident, the Tet Offensive, in relation to the elections in the United States around the same time. And the prior election of where Nixon lost to Kennedy, and then the Watergate incident, uh, uh, the and we had a similar circumstance here with Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and the congressional thing, January 6th incident. Now, this is like a Watergate. Now, you put that all together. What does that mean? With regards to Afghanistan, Watergate already happened. They already even have the report. They got 400 uh, uh, attackers who are in jail. So we say, in the context of American politics, Watergate for Afghanistan war already happened, and it's not just Afghanistan, but the war with China. Uh, what we see a lot of repatriation issues, which could take 20 years. Like Odysseus, getting home from the Trojan War took him 20 years. That's what happened in Vietnam. That's probably what will happen with a lot of soldiers from Afghanistan, for good or for bad. Repatriation in many instances with regards to Afghanistan, also possibly Australia. Those two countries are repatriation, returning soldiers home. Australia and Afghanistan, those are the issues, and that could take, just to get home, could take up to 20 years, in my opinion. Now, Armistice Day, a day to lay down our arms, Remembrance Day, a Veterans Day, to remember our veterans. Yeah, so many of these soldiers are still in a long, long fight and struggle, and some descriptions, even a war just to get home. Now, it also happens to be my birthday, but I would be fourth in line, considering all the other events, and then of course we must remember that 11 days from now will be a day uh, um, uh, to uh, to reflect on the assassination of our president, our president, John F. Kennedy, who is very important to me personally in my program during my life, and also very important for the American space program. Really, number one in my history books. I want to make one more comment about history books, which is, common ground or something. President, yeah, President Barack Obama, President. The main thing here regarding what I've been thinking about last, I started teaching certificate here in Bakersfield, California, and I learned about this thing called, which we all had mixed feelings about. The key is, a common curriculum. I don't remember what they call it because I've been busy with other things, but I thought talking about this with my roommate today is the common curriculum uh, issue with American textbooks, and history being the most important of these, just to agree on our history books, is the biggest issue with this. And I do want to say one political thing today, which is that I have concluded that having common history textbooks, common textbooks, is very important. However, as with World War II Germany, which I have been very concerned about, the issue being the Spanish flu plague, in 1918, went at the same time as, a Veterans Day, Remembrance Day, Armistice Day. There was a Spanish flu, of course, the rise of Adolf Hitler, etc., etc. Now, I am not in any way trying to change my story. No, what I'm saying, as far as moving forward to evaluate my final opinion on this common curriculum, as the main issue with rise of Nazism in Germany and the financial crisis there related, being the Spanish flu, which I was never educated about or do not recall being educated about. That the Spanish flu, where 50 million Germans died, dropped dead in 2 year time, 1918, I guess 1916 to 1918, perhaps, that this might have definitely led to the rise of Adolf Hitler. Nazism being initially a socialism movement and turned into something else, and the facts will speak for themselves thereafter in relation to a lot of plague remediation efforts and things that went wrong in panic, not as any kind of excuse for these intentional wrongdoings, but rather understanding, number one, that a lot of these, how to deal with a lot of these corpses, to be kind, number one is a real problem, and number two, that there was a lot of bad stuff that happened uh, as well. Now, that is how I would describe the history of Nazism in Germany. And in order to have a common history textbook, every country has to sign on to the history to be agreed upon. And this is important just as it took 20 years to resolve issues related to Vietnam. It'll probably take 20 years related to Afghanistan. And we do need, in order to have a more longer term peace in relation to Israel, Palestine, North and South Korea, closing the books on East and West Germany. Germany certainly wants a full and fair hearing on this particular topic when we write the final American version of the story for common curriculum, for American students at the very least. Now, with all these things, I just took this excuse and this opportunity to make this very serious statement. This Earth-based rockets intentionally not to be like so serious. And although I could, what I'm saying. So, Cambodia, yes. Vietnam, yes. No, we're talking about Afghanistan now. So, thank you, and have a happy holiday season.